Thanks again to our sponsors Hit Point Press and their Fable Makers deck. Alright guys, Jameson and Alex here. Today we're going to be going over a deep dive of the Unearthed Arcana Rules Glossary because we have a ton of thoughts about a lot of these changes made in the new ONE D&D / 5.5e version of the future of D&D, whatever you want to call it. So yeah, lots of things changing on here in this first Unearthed Arcana.
We have thoughts.
We have many thoughts. So don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to be entered in our D&D Beyond Players Bundle giveaway.
That's right.
But let's just get straight into this. With the arcane spells, I'll just lump in the other ones as well because this is on here. But basically, they have the 3 separate spell lists now that are the generic general spell lists. They did mention in the interview with Jeremy Crawford that they will have ways of introducing specific spells for classes and specific spells for subclasses. How they want to do that, we're not entirely sure of. Maybe they will have a separate spell list for classes as they do now, but then also have general broad spell lists. Yeah. Not sure on that. But the arcane spells are for bards, sorcerers, warlock, wizards, and artificers. I think it is important that they mention artificers in this because they are redoing the player's handbook, which means they will most likely put artificers in the player's handbook, which is something you could have easily overlooked looking at this.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I thought, okay, they're going to put artificer somewhere else, or wait, are they going to include artificer? Like, my brain started turning gears and, like, literally pausing before I read that the artificer was in there.
The divine spell list, which is for clerics and paladins, of course, on here. And then, of course, the primal spell list, which, you guessed it, druids and rangers. So, those are, again, we'll see how they want to move forward with those in the future.
Yep.
And then, a quick note on here, too, they have split up on here the tools stuff. The main thing with Artisan's Tools, they have Artisan's Tools and musical instruments is how they're classified. So with those, they kind of changed the prices to make them all in line specifically for the backgrounds. So that when you take stuff, you're not getting different gold values worth depending on what items you pick. They wanted to make it a little bit more streamlined and having a set gold value for those, which backgrounds are a whole thing in and of themselves. We're not going to get into that too much.
Nope.
But basically just tool proficiencies, or Artisan's Tools now are 15 gold apiece, and instruments are 20 gold apiece, just for everything.
So we get to the new term of a D20 test, which would be the new keyword, key phrase, whatever you want to call it, that will include anything that is a D20 roll, so an attack roll, ability check, or a saving throw. So there's a lot of rules, class abilities, race abilities, feats, all this kind of stuff that says whenever you make an attack roll, ability check, or a saving throw, that terminology will now be shortened into a D20 test. The other thing with this, with D20 rolls in general, is going to be the way natural 20s and natural 1s work in terms of automatic success, automatic failures. Right. It was never physically written or carved in stone with a hammer and a chisel that was the case, but a lot of groups played that way, which makes more sense because if you're rolling a dice, there should be a chance at failure and there should be a chance at success. As Jameson mentioned in our overview video of this, if there is a chance, if it's something that is not possible, as it specifies in the DM's guide, you should not be letting your players make a roll for it. Right. If we've got a human with no spell casting and no crazy feats that let it jump 400 foot across a gap, then they can't do it.
Can I make an athletics check to jump across this chasm? It's like, no.
It's like, do you have a level 3 spell slot for and load the spell fly, or can someone else give you that? No. Then you're not rolling to get over there. With that, sticking with the whole 20 situations, it was critical hits.
Well, I want to throw on one side thing before we get to that.
Go ahead.
It does have one little side tangent paragraph on here, which is a little weird to me, which in the D20 test, which says, to be warranted, a D20 test must have a target number no less than 5 and no greater than 30. And the no greater than 30 part is the thing that kind of confuses me, because I've seen some people in forums and stuff basically saying, well, if my rogue rolls a 32 in stealth, does that mean no one even gets a chance to roll to see them? Yeah. Which I think I have 2 schools of thought here. The first one is that either contests, so like a person's stealth check versus a person's perception check would not fall under this because it's a contested check.
Sure.
So in that circumstance, I as a DM would say you can still have a contest to see if you can see them. But the other thought is if they tweak proficiency modifiers, if they tweak ability score modifiers to a point where 30 is the cap, that might be what they're looking to do. Is maybe it won't even be possible to roll over a 30.
Yeah.
Or they might just say anything over a 30 is a 30.
Treat it as a 30.
So depending on how they do that, we'll have to see in the future how they tweak stuff.
Yeah.
What that is, because that means basically, if anything is over 30, something's gonna have to give because that rule doesn't make sense unless they were looking at doing that.
Yeah.
So, just a little side thought.
Yeah, indeed. Criticals hits. Okay, so there's a bunch of changes that fall under this, and there will be words.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we'll go with the good news first for on the player side of things. Only players can critical hit now. Bosses can't critical hit. Any creature you're fighting, I said bosses, anything you're fighting, cannot critical hit against you, which you're thinking like just tears of joy for those of us that have terrible luck. But that sounds like it's just them trying to help players out. Really what that is more about is helping DMs balance numbers, because if the DM's not trying to outright kill their party every time they fight something, which they shouldn't be, at least not, especially not early on. If you get to level 17, by all means. You expect some deadly shenanigans in there.
Absolutely.
You get up that 17, 18 level stuff. It's going to give you bad. But you don't, as a DM and a player, you don't want the third combat of a campaign for a random critical hit to like one-shot somebody.
Right.
Because the thing they're fighting is, a big guy and he's got one ability that's big. He can only use once every short rest and it happens to crit and then just one-shot somebody off the screen. Like, that's not fun for anybody. Cause it's not what you want. So without saying, it's one of the biggest reasons why they did it that way, is to help that out. However, critical strikes on the player side of things now only trigger on a weapon attack on unarmed strike. Yeah. So spellcasters take that middle finger and like it. They're not the only ones either. Yeah. It says you would re-roll an extra weapon die or unarmed strike die. So that means sneak attack. Paladin smites
is different.
Yep.
Paladin smites are different.
Yeah, one of the most reliable burst damages in the games of critical confirmed smites gone.
Yeah. So it is going to have a huge impact.
Yeah.
And I think one of the reasons they're looking to do that is because they want to, and I'll kind of transition smoothly over here, into the updated inspiration rules.
Yes.
And I think this is where the warrant for the critical hits is. And they did mention as well that this is probably one of the biggest things that they're looking at tweaking, because
it's the most really malleable thing in the UA for sure.
It's really controversial because a lot of people are like, my damage output is going to be down crazy because I can't confirm stuff.
Yeah, rogues and paladins and spellcasters are all like, okay, what do I get to help me?
I think part of it too is spellcasters in general, like a lot of their spells, even wizards, when we reviewed the Wand Lord Wizard, a lot of their spells are saves. They're not spell attacks.
Yeah.
So even with that, it's really not as big of a deal as you might initially think.
Yeah.
Because you're like, I can't crit spells anymore. It's like,
it's going to be much more common, like affecting your cantrips, like spell attacking cantrips.
Right.
Is
so
where
warlocks,
Eldritch
Blast is getting a big hit there because they can't deal that extra damage.
Fire bolts for your wizards and sorcerers. That's going to feel bad because you can't turn a 4d10 into an 8d10 for a cantrip. But as much as I hate that general rule, because I feel like spellcasters are getting hated on that way, it does feel kind of weird that you can crit with a zero damaging, like zero cost, like level spell for up to 80 damage.
Yeah,
that does seem a little wild.
Yeah, it is kind of crazy considering, comparatively, you use an action for a weapon attack, and it's like 1d12.
But then, but then sneak attack exists, but sneak attack also is going to be affected by this nerf as well.
So I think in general, it's going to tone down stuff. And another thought I have on top of that, before I get into the inspiration changes, because there's so many things to be said. It's kind of like rabbit hole, why they're doing this, why they're doing that.
But all the rabbit holes are going to tunnel back together, and they'll meet. It's a network.
It is. It's just an anthill. So, with having that extra change on there, you have that lower damage floor.
Yeah.
But you also have lower damage floor for monsters because they're not going to be doing that. So the big thought on here is, are they going to revamp a lot of the way monsters are done? To change, because originally the rules were suggesting for DMs 6 to 8 encounters per day. Well, I believe they've caught on to the fact that a lot of people either don't do 6 to 8 encounters a day.
Because we sure don't.
Well, 6 to 8 combat encounters is what most people think of, but encounters can be anything from social interactions, exploration, anything that's using resources.
Correct. Yeah.
Which, with our play group, they are very, very, very frugal with their ability usage. So I have to really almost do some crazy stuff to get them to even use any abilities. But
I'm always afraid I'm going to run out when I actually need them, so I try to get by unless I really need to pull the trigger.
So does that mean that they're potentially, because they're downscaling damage outputs, that they want to tweak maybe monsters or maybe make less encounters per day?
Yeah.
Which I think could make sense to do that.
Sure.
The other thought, tying back into where I kind of trailed off to and coming full circle back to.
We have made the turn back to the left, back in the middle.
Inspiration now. So it was something that a lot of playgroups I don't think really used, which is the DM could reward players for maybe some good RP or something that really made sense for their character. They could just say, oh, here you go, here's the inspiration, which is just
some cleverly done maneuver in combat.
Just a free advantage use.
Yep.
So with that, you can only have one at a time, which was, I believe, how it was originally.
That's fine.
But now, if you finish a long rest and you have one, it goes away. So you don't start the day with another one.
Unless you're a human.
Which we'll get to that in the races video.
That's a different video.
That's a different video talking about that. That's a whole other thing in and of itself. But you also can gain inspiration now. Whenever you roll a D20 test and you roll a natural 20, you gain a use of inspiration, which is
not bardic inspiration. This is just like regular inspiration. Two different things.
Yeah, I'm thinking they might actually change the wording of bardic inspiration because it might be confusing for people because it is a very different thing.
Yeah.
So maybe it could be like bardic. I can't think of another word.
Bardic empowerment.
There you go.
It's not going to be what they use, but it's still something.
Yes.
Words. I know words.
So with that, getting that extra advantage roll is going to mean you're going to be getting critical hits more often because you're going to be rolling more D20s.
I mean, mathematically, period, it's going to happen more often. Now, how more often, it depends on how lucky you are. Our rogue will be getting them every 3 minutes.
Right.
I will see them once every week.
So, and you can also, if you already have a use of inspiration and you get another one, you can give it to another player.
Which is my favorite thing about the entire mechanic, is the fact, it's the same thing with the alert feat. Again, we talk about feats in the video. I like that they are clearly leaning more toward like party composition and party synergy stuff, because we like synergy on this channel. I think because it encourages you to work together to accomplish things and find creative ways to use resources to benefit each other, which is always a good thing. You are technically a group working together to accomplish, to play through this story of setting.
Yes.
So I think that's a interesting way, because you don't want to punish, because it would feel really bad if you rolled a 20, it's the first one you've gotten in a while, you're like, oh cool, I've got advantage, and then your very next roll you drop another one, you're just like, I haven't had inspiration in 4 sessions, and now I get one, and I can't use this other one that you can just get. It's like, but I'm so lucky today. Yes. My friend can have this one.
And the thing with that too is that Jeremy Crawford mentioned in the long form interview was basically that they wanted to give you incentive to use it because you're going to be getting it more often. You have more incentive to use the advantage, and I think also this is going to make players feel better for other people like Alex who suffer from natural 1 syndrome. To give you better chances so that you're not just rolling terrible all the time. You have some extra advantages that when your rogue rolls 20s every other roll, they can give them to someone like Alex.
He's going to be livid about the critical change. He is going to be... Our rogue is a lot like Jameson. The fact he's normally pretty level-headed, pretty even keel most of the time. Something crazy goes, you get a little excited, you come down a little bit, but pretty even keel most of the time. When you're telling me they're going to take away his crit sneak attacks, I'm going to have to restrain it. It's going to be a fun conversation.
Pretty likely.
I'll make sure that you're in the room or like on the call when I call him to let him know, or maybe I'll wait to tell him the next time he comes to town and be like, hey, guess what?
Yeah, for sure. So I think the biggest thing with the critical hits and inspiration is they are actually, those two rules are very tightly tied together.
They are tied at the hip.
So because you're getting more, advantage, you're going to be rolling more crits, which is why they're toning down the crits, which you're going to be toning those down so you can get more advantage. So because of that, if you're just getting extra advantage all the time and crits do not change at all, you're going to be pumping damage like crazy.
Yeah.
Because, when you have a party of 4, or if you have a party of 6, you're going to be rolling natural 20s relatively often.
Just because number of people there, yeah.
Exactly. So depending on party size, your critical hits could be getting very, just already annihilating encounters that right now are easy enough as is. So those two things are very tied together.
Next up is going to be the slight, change, clarification on rests. The more important thing here to read through is the interrupting the rest.
Yes.
The long rest is interrupted by a combat or by 1 hour of walking, casting spells, or similar activity. The rest confers no benefits and must be restarted. However, if the rest was at least 1 hour long before the interruption, the creature gains the benefit of a short rest. So if you were in the middle of a long rest and you got jumped in the middle of the night, 2 hours into your long rest, you could at least roll hit die as part of that short rest before that combat were to initiate, because you would gain that benefit before it was interrupted.
Right. So adding that extra thing on there just gives you some extra, ways to not completely lose an entire block of time like that.
Yep.
You at least get a little bit of benefit from there, which is nice for what it is.
Yep.
Okay, so I think we're getting into the last stretch of things on here, and we kind of already covered the stuff. The one other thing that I kind of glossed over really quickly is also with the 2 proficiencies.
Yep.
Gaming sets now all cost 1 gold piece, so just throwing that in there real quick.
Musical instruments are now all 20 gold pieces.
Yes.
Again, for consistency's sake, it makes complete sense.
We have some major updates to a couple conditions, and Unarmed Strike major buffs on here.
Yes.
So let's do the Unarmed Strike first. Okay. I'm feeling it.
Go for it.
So with Unarmed Strikes now...
You make me happy first before you make me upset?
Yeah, right.
Great.
Exactly. That was a thought. So, with the Unarmed Strikes, in the original book, it was only an attack.
Yes.
It was an unarmed strike.
Punch, kick, headbutt, elbow, knee. Your choice.
Right. You had previously had other action options for grapple and shove. Now, grapple, shove, and the strike, damage is what they call it on here, are all classified as unarmed strikes, which means monks gain a lot of utility right off the bat. Because when you're flurry of blow or hitting up, you can be, instead of dealing damage, you can just be flurry of blows to knock someone back repeatedly.
Because I can imagine your jab is so quick, it just literally just force of air pushes somebody back with a shove.
Right.
It'd be just kind of a fun way to flavor that. But yeah, you're just shoving people left and right.
So you're going to gain some more utility as a monk on here. And again, they do crit for chances of the updated critical hit rules, which is nice, but most people are only going to be doing the bludgeoning damage plus your strength mod.
Yep.
Which, sure, but for monks, this is a big deal.
Right, because
it's going to be a nice buff to them.
Because I already imagine the monk time when me or someone will take the time and it's like, okay, flurry of blows, and I want to make just 4 shoves and try to shove somebody back into a wall of fire. It's like,
right,
get back in there. You could do that. You could push somebody off a ledge 20 feet if it's 20 feet of gap, but it's just push. That's fantastic. It doesn't seem like much, but again, it helps give monks some more combat utility.
Yeah.
Almost, again, it's not quite this wild, but it almost feels like monks are trying to be like the martial wizards as far as the amount of flexibility they have and utility in combat, where, wizards are the utility spellcasters, kind of, their generic, nomenclature there. But I love this for monks because it lets them be a lot more choosy with their options of what they can do, and it makes flurry of blows that much more impactful. Besides just normally I could use my bonus action to punch somebody. Now I can use my flurry of blows and punch somebody and then try to grapple them so they can't go anywhere.
Yes, And the other thing here is with the grappling, there is the updated grapple rules, which it does specify on here. The target is grappled, and the escape DC is 8 plus your strength mod plus your proficiency bonus.
Yes. So I would hope with monks specifically, they rewrite that for them to where it could be their dex or their strength, or even their wisdom or their dex or their strength. Just because there are some monk subclasses.
Because like their key save is wisdom based.
Right. So there are some monk subclasses where you can actually attack using your wisdom.
Right.
So I wouldn't want those subclasses to be punished because of that. So maybe it'd be dex or wisdom choice.
Yeah, and it does specify on here, it's only one size larger than you, which sure. And if you have a free hand to grab the target, so you can just grab.
Ancestral. Or what is it? What's the
Thri-Kreen?
No, yes. But what's the monk that has the extra arms?
Astral
Self? Yeah, Astral Self monk gets the extra arm so he can grab everyone.
Yeah, you can do some shenanigans with there. But with the...
He becomes Machamp. He got 4 arms to grab everybody.
So with the updated grapple rules on here, it was just speed reduced to 0.
Yes.
Now, it's speed reduced to 0 and can't change. You have disadvantage on attack rolls against any target other than the grappler.
Right.
So it's kind of like that... what is the fighting style where it's if you don't attack anyone other than the person? Defender? Protector?
Or protection, yeah.
Protection?
Yeah.
Protector. Anyways, so you get some utility with that, and then also the grappler can drag or carry you, but the grappler suffers the slow condition, which I'll get to in a second. And unless you're too or 2 or more sizes smaller than the grappler.
Obviously,
because then they just
ginormous is just like, I don't care if you're 6 foot, 220 pounds. I'm 1,000 pounds and 20 foot tall. I just drag you wherever I want to.
Right. And then, of course, now the escape is a dex or strength saving throw against the escape DC, which they can make at the end of their turn, which means they could probably break it a lot easier than normal because it's a saving throw instead of an ability check.
Mm-hmm.
But, it's going to be easier to do it to grapple because all you have to do is hit them with an attack, and then you just instantly grapple them. So it's going to be interesting to see how that works.
But to me, also, because of this and the way this is done for monks specifically, like, the grappler feat, depending on how it's redone in there, could become a lot more valuable for monks in general.
Right. I imagine they probably will redo that with the changes to grapple on here. I'm sure it's going to be a big overhaul.
But speaking of conditions, the slowed condition is the additional new condition on here, which we will try to keep that discussion as light as possible. Limited movement, you must spend 1 extra foot of movement for every foot you use. Basically, your movement speed is cut in half, a la like a difficult terrain situation. Attack rolls against you have advantage, and you have disadvantage on dexterity saving throws. I hate this. And the biggest reason why I hate this is one of my biggest complaints with 5th edition rules as they currently constitute is there are way too many conditions. And it's not just me as a player. Like, I could be affected by too many things. It's hard for both the player and the DM to keep track of all of the different conditions and what's different about each of the conditions. And, like, a couple of the worst examples are stunned, paralyzed, petrified, incapacitated. All 4 have overlapping rules with each other.
Yeah.
There's 0 reason... There's 0 good reasons to why those are 4 different conditions. You could convince me it's 2. You see this? 2, not 4. 2, not 4. Because it's just unnecessary. It gets way too wordy. Same thing with like even grappling and restrained. You could even figure out a way to do it together. Anyway. I hope and pray, and they did say in some of the interviews and things that they are looking. There's going to be in-depth UAs at all areas of the rules because they're essentially redoing or updating a new version of the whole player's handbook and the rule set. Please condense the number of conditions.
There are 15 conditions currently.
Yeah.
And then we're adding on slows. That would put it at 16. So I feel like they have to
get it down to 10.
And I think
it's just 10.
I think with the last updated condition that they're doing, which is incapacitated, they very well could update the number of conditions and condense them down.
They have
because as Alex mentioned, petrified, stunned, paralyzed, all have the other tag in there as you are incapacitated and something else.
Yeah.
So now with the updates to incapacitated, which I'll go over right now, which is what it originally was, which is you can't attack or you can't take actions or reactions. Sure. But now it's also, if you have concentration, it's broken.
Ick.
You can't speak. So verbal components.
You can't tell somebody you're incapacitated.
And if you're incapacitated when you roll initiative, you have disadvantage on the roll. When those spell lists have so many concentration spells, they need to be more impactful.
Yes.
So they probably will either, A, reduce the number of encounters used a day, which means you're going to be using less spell slots, so that if you do have break concentration, it's not that big of a deal to recast it.
Right.
Or B, they completely change a lot of the spells and take off concentration.
Yeah.
Or maybe make the concentration spells that exist more impactful than they already are.
Agreed.
For that warranted change.
Of those, I would prefer them just cutting down the number of spells that require concentration. Because, again, there are so many, you feel like, well, I can't do this, and it's not, part of it's not as big of a deal for your druids, your clerics, and your wizards, because technically you're preparing spells. You could change your spells, you know a bunch of spells, but dadgum for your bards and especially your sorcerers who only know X number of spells anyway, poor sorcerers on that front. And, if you only know 15 spells and 5 of them are concentration, so a third of your spell is, well, I can't really learn this spell. I want to learn it, but I've already got too many concentration spells, and 18 things can break my concentration. So it's like, ugh.
The other potential change that could be is they could completely rework Warcaster. Because the way Warcaster is now, it makes it really easy for casters in general to maintain their concentration.
And because it feels almost mandatory.
Right.
For a lot of casters to take.
Either they make it more impactful, because if they just get rid of that, if they get rid of Warcaster and they add this, that's a massive nerf.
Yeah.
That is a massive
it could be that they buff Warcaster and it becomes like a level 12 feat or something, like you can't get it.
Maybe
obviously you're not getting it at first level unless they haven't listed all the first level feats yet, obviously, which is could be true as well. But I could totally understand that not being a level 1 feat, because you're not casting that many spells at level 1 anyway.
Right.
But I could even see that being pushed back past like level 8 to at least a level 10 or level 12, and I could totally understand that because it's really good. It's really good.
Yeah. So some major impacts here. There's a lot of stuff going on for spellcasters.
Yeah.
That they're going to be getting a lot of potential changes to them. But again, with all of these warranted changes, they are most likely, I would guess, going to be reworking a lot of spells.
Yeah.
Which, they say that this rule set is supposed to be backwards compatible.
Yeah.
But I feel like that backwards compatibility is only going to be with adventures. Because when you're redoing this many things for Player's Handbook, for Monster Manual, for Dungeon Master's Guide, it's almost a completely different game at this point. Because the abilities that were really good are now, maybe you would never even take them.
Yeah.
Because of the changes that are made, which is a huge difference.
Yeah.
So how do they do that?
And like I said, baseline monks, if this stays the way it is, become a lot more viable, which, humble opinion, monks are probably one of the weaker base classes.
Yeah, I agree.
As far as what they can offer. They have a lot of great, that too.
I think those two classes are going to see a lot of changes.
Because monks have a lot of great RP things that they get because of all the languages and their timeless body and a lot of cool flavor things. But as far as like actual
saving throws,
a lot of mechanical stuff that besides the saving throw thing, a lot of mechanical stuff they're really lacking in. But this even just this lets them be if you're a smart player and a creative player, can do a lot more just with your flurry of blows being out there all the time.
Yeah. So I think we're going to see a lot of changes to classes. Spells are going to be, because of these changes to critical hits and inspiration, and the spell list too is a whole other thing that could impact that as well. How they want to split up the spell lists for classes. So there's a lot of changes I think spellcasters are going to get a lot of changes done to them. So it's hard to say what is going to be the spellcaster, choice options 2 years from now when they release this update, because there's so many different changes being made. It's going to be hard to gauge.
Yeah.
And then lastly on here, just a very quick little gloss over here, because
Oh, yeah.
Tremorsense.
Yeah.
So...
very small change.
Yes, this is something... at first, I didn't even notice it.
Yeah.
But it is actually a pretty big deal. So, with Tremorsense, they kind of changed the wording a little bit with it, which was within... It used to be when you could pinpoint a creature within a specific radius. Well, now it's a specific range, kind of like Dark Vision has a range. It's not just a radius around you. It's kind of weird that they did that. But the more important thing is that it says detecting are both in contact with the same surface, such as the wall, ground, or ceiling, or the same liquid.
Not same substance.
It was substance. Yeah. So that is a big deal. So now if you're in water and you have Tremorsense, you could feel something around. Whereas before...
if you're diving in some dark, pitch black cavern lake and something starts swimming towards you, you technically could sense it.
Right. So liquid and substance, that is a semantic thing, but there are some, differences. Like a substance, there's gray area with goo.
Technically, gas is a substance.
Right.
So for those people, right, as I'm saying, so people I Tremorsense the air.
Well, it does specifically say, too, you can't detect objects in the air.
Right.
But, yes.
Fragments.
But yeah, so that little semantic term on there could come up, but for the most part, it's just semantics. It's probably not going to be that big a deal between liquid and substance. I mean, substance is more broad, liquid's a little bit more defined.
Yeah.
So, but that's really all of the rules changes on here, guys. So, lots of stuff, lots of thoughts, as you probably heard.
And by all means, if there's anything, especially if there's something specific you find that you think, hey, did you guys think about this? Let us know.
Yes.
This is just as we're going over our thoughts on the UAs, this is probably the series of videos I'm most looking forward to reading your guys' comments about.
Yeah, there's a ton of
because
stuff.
When you get into play testing, new content, things like that, there's a lot of potentials for things. And there's some of you out there have already thought of some silly shenanigans. But now because of this, you could pair this with this, and just be stupid. It's yes, that's probably right. So by all means, tell us what some fun things you could see coming up, or some things you hope they change.
Yeah.
Like conditions, and other things like that. So yeah.
Thanks again to our sponsors, Hit Point Press and their Fable Makers deck. Omens and fortunes that you can incorporate into your campaigns. It's got books to describe ways to add these things into your campaigns, to add intrigue, plot hooks, all kinds of different ways to utilize these features.
Hey, check out this really weird or intriguing, interesting thing that kind of steer people back towards your main plotline that you're needing to advance a story you're trying to get to.
Absolutely. So guys, make sure you check out the link in the description down below. Yeah, so I think we'll just keep it there as short as possible.
We don't do short.
But that's it for today, guys. If you enjoyed the video, like, subscribe, hit the bell notifications so you know when all of our new videos are coming out. And as always, thanks for watching.